from the Welsh mythology. That's really hard to say. From Welsh mythology. Hello and welcome to A Mountain Book Garden. I'm Liz and welcome back. So this video is going to be the mid-year check-in freakout. I've only recently started watching Book Talk like late spring. So when June and July rolled around, I've seen this tag a whole bunch and realized before I started HRCYED, I'd read a lot of books. So this week I took some time and I used the HRCYED spreadsheet. I made a copy and decided to track and kind of see some of the stats for the books that I had read from January 1st until I started HRCYED in late June, figuring, hey, that's a pretty good mid-year book check-in. Well, I realized why my eyes are so dry all the time. I've read about 10,800 pages, and I've listened to about 102 hours of listening from January through like mid-July. I've read 49 books. The average rating has been 3.94, so I've liked a lot of the books. There have been 6 books that have been 5-star, 35 books that are 4-star, 7 books that are 3-star, and 1 book that was 2-star that I probably should have DNF'd, but I didn't want to. I don't know. Here's the check-in for the pre-HRCYED books. First question is, what is the best book that you've read so far in 2025? And this one is a little bit hard because it wasn't actually one of my 5-star books. And I think it's because I read the sequel recently. I would say that Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross is the one that has stuck with me the most. And so I just won't shut up about it. I love that she created this whole world. And then I was talking to a friend recently and I realized that some of the gods and goddesses that this friend was talking about are Welsh, from the Welsh mythology. That's really hard to say. From Welsh mythology. And it sounded really familiar to what I knew from Rebecca Ross. So now I'm going to probably fall down this rabbit hole of where she got the ideas for the mythology. I think reading Divine Rivals last week and being immersed back in the world helped pop it back up to my favorite book. It's the one I keep recommending to people for the most part, unless they're not like a mythology person. Then I wouldn't recommend it. As of today, which this might change because we never know what'll happen, Wild Reverence is the one that I would say is my favorite book of 2025 so far. Pre-HRCYED. So what has been your favorite sequel of the first half of the year? So I stumbled on this series from like one of those cheap Kindle book email things, and it is the Toronto Time Agents. And I think one of the sequels that I like the most, there's 5 books in the series. I have read, I think, 4 of them. They're a little hard to like decipher which order they are. Every time I've Googled it, it's not super clear, so I don't know that it's a well-known series. Our main character, his name is Wilda, and she's a middle-aged, coffee-loving seamstress who makes clothing for time travel. And if that is not like my ideal job, I don't know what is. She stopped time traveling though after her son and husband died on an ill-fated trip, and you learn about that in the books. So now she is one of the few people related to the time travel industry in the near future, based in Toronto, who can correct all the timeline problems. And of course, someone is trying to mess up the timeline for their own good. I really love one. I had read like a lot of books that were, teenage heroines, and that's lovely and all, but I am not in that season. And so I want to know those middle-aged heroines whose knees crack and they wish for coffee. And Wilda is that heroine. So she goes back to a place and she is fully immersed in the place, but she is also wishing for coffee. And she talks about how her knees hurt and how she is getting too old for this. And she is still the most competent and experienced time traveler in the group that she is with. So when you look for it on Goodreads, the listings are kind of confusing. I think I read them in a little bit out of order. Bridget's Veil was the one I liked the most, I think. There were also a couple of books, and this is one of them, that all of a sudden had druids in the character list. And so now I'm just fascinated with druids. I don't know. This is how it happens. The third tag, is there a new release that you haven't read yet, but you're really excited to? This also took a while to think about and looking through lists, and I probably would answer differently tomorrow or the next day. I mean, I wrote some of this yesterday and went through the list yesterday. Even today, I'm kind of like, I don't know if this is really the ones I'm the most excited about, but I am excited about these. Let's put it that way. So the first one is Japanese Gothic which is about two inhabitants of the same house who are living in different years, but somehow they collide. So, like, one is possibly a ghost, one is a time traveler. I don't know. I haven't read it yet. I'm a little nervous that it's listed as horror and has gore, and I will just skim those parts if I need to. I don't do gore really well, which is surprising coming up when I talk later about Dungeon Crawler Carl and how much I love that. I'm a mystery. I don't know. But I am really excited. Every time someone mentions Japanese Gothic, I look it up immediately and I'm like, oh, yes, that's the one I have to make sure is on my list. So I'm very excited about that one. Then the second book that's new, I do not remember if it has been released yet or if it's just coming up in the next few months, is This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me. So a reader ends up in her favorite series, and the only way to survive is her encyclopedic knowledge of the world from rereading and rereading the story while she's been waiting for this final installment. And it's been compared to Outlander meets Game of Thrones. Now, again, if we have a lot of gore, I will just skim over those parts. It's okay. I can read a story with it. The idea, kind of like Jasper Ford's series, The Air Affair, where people can go into books and experience the book. I'm guessing I will really like that. I also love Outlander. I have never indulged in Game of Thrones. I never plan to indulge with Game of Thrones. I've heard it's great. I don't think it's for me. I don't know. Then the another question is, what's your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? And I just don't keep up well with current when things are being released. I've just been watching a lot of booktube where I've been getting recommendations, and then I've been following Her Kid stuff to get more recommendations to fill the Her Kid things. But a lot of the books that I've been drawn to seem to have been written in the past, say, 7 to 10 years. So maybe I'm just kind of catching up on the past 10 years of books. So then the next book tag is, what is your biggest disappointment so far? And I would say there are two out of the book that I've read since January. One is a Nora Roberts book. I could have sworn I liked Nora Roberts books, but The Liar by Nora Roberts was just really boring, and I gave it 2 stars. It's the only book that I gave 2 stars, and I should have probably DNF'd it. I don't know why. Like, it's a story about a young woman who has a baby. Her husband is like a Ponzi scheme guy, con artist, and she gets out of that situation. That sounds like a lovely story. And she falls in love with someone. She goes back home to Tennessee. There's some Appalachian mountain living, and none of it was really interesting. It was very tropish. But it also would be probably a really good beach read, truthfully. Maybe? I don't know. It would make just, like light fluff that you're not going to get super attached to any of the characters. I did not get super attached to any of the characters. Most of the time I was just waiting to see if there was going to be a twist or a turn or something that I thought was coming, and then it wasn't. I don't know. Meh. I have a couple other Nora Roberts books on my Kindle that I may read in the future. I might just skip them. I don't know. So maybe I've just moved to different likes. Then the second book that was a kind of big disappointment is Regrettably I'm About to Cause Trouble. And it was a disappointment really for only 2 reasons. One, the language drove me crazy. And look, I am not some crazy medievalist who is going to come at you for not having the right fabric or the right style. I can enjoy Bridgerton with the best of them. However, there's just some modern language that they were not using in the Middle Ages and in Tudor England. And every time that language popped up, I was like, it would like rip me from the story. It was quite annoying. If some of the language had just been changed, I would have not been ripped out of the story and could have focused better on the story. So that was one thing. And then 2, I felt like there were 2 different stories that happened in this book that either could have been fleshed out or could have been 2 little novellas. The first one is there's a low-level royal who can't find a suitable marriage because of a birthmark. She eventually does find a marriage. It's terrible. She runs away. Like, that in itself could have been a great story. She goes to live with the local witches. Also, that could be a great ending to a story. And how does that affect her? You know, she had been this kind of like prissy rich girl and had everything sort of handed to her, and the witches expect her to work for her living and her space. And that's just new to her. That could be something interesting. And then the second story is kind of when the witches are then called back to the royal court in Tudor England, and they're to entertain the king with tales and psychic readings, etc., during the Christmas holiday. And so it's like a long stretch of time that they're at the court. It's not just a one-day party. That story I thought was more interesting because it did inspire me to want to write like a time travel orchestra adventure, because one, I love me a good time travel story. I have to intersperse them with my reading on a regular basis. And then two, I could easily write an orchestra story from experience. That would be no problem. And then I would not be so annoyed when you go back to whatever era and they're using the wrong language, because I'll just check in with some of my more medieval geeky friends and make sure that the language is appropriate. See, could solve all the problems all at once, and that would be wonderful. I haven't yet gotten into writing. I have a lot of friends who are all of a sudden into writing, or all of a sudden now talking about how they're into writing. I think they've been writing for a long time. I just am hearing more about it. And so maybe that will be my next creative outlet. I've been trying to figure out like a third space creative outlet, and the booktube thing is going to be one of the third spaces, but I think the writing could be another just way to express more things. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Okay, so the next tag is, what is your biggest surprise so far? And I would have to say Dungeon Crawler Carl. I heard about it from one of my good friends who had heard about it from her husband, who is a Magic the Gathering kind of guy. I wasn't totally sure I would enjoy it. One, I do enjoy games a lot. I'm very bad at video games, but I enjoy them. I like the storylines of D&D stuff, but I've never really played significantly. But I really, really, really dislike violence in my media, which we've already talked about. I kind of assumed I would read book 1 to see what all the fuss was about, and now I'm currently on book 4 and hoping to finish book 4 by the end of next week. That was a surprise. It's just so irreverent. There's so many videos about Dungeon Crawler Carl. If you have not hopped on this train, I will let other people explain it. One, I love Princess Donut. 2, I love Mongo. 3, Carl is amazing. So, you know, all the rest of the stuff, if I need to skim over when they're describing how heads explode and bodies are disintegrating and the evil AI is doing terrible things to Carl's feet, I just kind of skim over those sections. It's okay. All right. A book that made me cry. I know something made me cry from January to June. I'm sure of it. But when I'm looking through the lists of the books and the covers, I'm not finding it. So, like, I don't think anything was that kind of emotional tear down. I think things filled me up more than tore me apart, which is probably good for 6 months of reading. I don't think that'll be a goal for the next 6 months, is to find something to make me feel my feels. Maybe it should be. I don't know. In the next 6 months, we'll see what I can come up with. Next tag, a book that made me happy. There's actually a few of them. One standalone book is Oona Out of Order. And as you have heard me say multiple times, I love a good time travel book. I'm a huge fan of Doctor Who. My dad was really into Star Trek. So anything sci-fi, time warps, trying to explain any of that, I find it fascinating. So I realized the title told me that she would go out of order, but I didn't realize her family would know and help her. So she is a 19-year-old. When the book starts, she's 19 years old. She's about to have a birthday. It happens to be on New Year's. She's at a New Year's party, and when the clock strikes midnight, she is catapulted to a different age. And I believe the first jump was into her 50s. And then she bounces around for the entirety of the book. You realize early on that her mom knows what's happening, and people are there to try to help her with all of these jumps. They make a rule of not telling each other what they know. Like, she will tell them where she came from, but she won't give them information about what happened in that year. So she experiences everything a year at a time, and then she jumps to a new year. And so she is completely out of order, but everyone around her is going in order. She finds a way to make money through some smart gambling and stock options. So she doesn't have to worry about that. She has a house. She can always go back to the same place. She's, trying to jump potentially in the same places. Sometimes she goes decades. Sometimes she only goes back a year or two. I really just liked how the author compiled all of that, and like trying to figure out how would you picture a story where she's going completely out of order, but the people around her are going in order, and how do you create a story that way? Like, it was just so fascinating to me. I think also because I was listening to it, the audiobook narrator was always telling you, okay, internally she's 20, but externally she's 52, or whatever the two combinations are. So then in her 20th year, she was whatever age. That growth that she had from 19 to end the book was really inspiring, because each year she kind of focused on one specific thing: staying home and recovering, traveling, having as much fun as possible. Like, she just kind of would jump into it. It was really cool and thought-provoking. The second one that made me really happy was the Murder Bot series. So I stumbled on that because I was looking for an audiobook that was not too long that I could use on a drive to family and back. And so that drive's only like 45 minutes, so I didn't want it to be like 17 weeks of listening to the same book. So I just used the library function to find a short book that I could listen to. I have not listened to the first or second one. I think I listened to 3, 4, and 5 because that's what the library had available. But I love Murderbot. Murderbot is a robot who was built as a murderer and an assassin, and he grows a conscience. And it's in the future, and he seems to get himself into these things where he has to help save the humans, and he has feelings, and he really just wants to hang out and watch his stories. And he just sounds so cute. So I need to listen to more Murderbot for the rest of the year as they come available on Libby. Then the third ones that made me really happy was the Chaotic Orbit series. So this is like a high octane space heist. Ada is a scavenger, and she stumbles on a shipwreck, and she uses looters' rights to access the ship. And then the government ship that came to the rescue of this down ship is run by Ryan White, and he ends up saving her when her ship gets a hole in it. 3 novellas later, you're still trying to figure out who is manipulating who. There were really good twists and turns, and I had like a harder time guessing them, and it was one of those situations where I could see like a web or a branch of different ways the story could go, and I didn't always pick which one the author ended up picking. So it was really fun. I really like heists also because they tend to be less gory. And this one had like environmental considerations in the book, and trying to imagine how do you save a planet. That just seems like a very important thing for us to pay attention to. All right, the next tag is, what books do you want to read by the end of the year? A lot of them. Like a lot, a lot, a lot. Not that I own them, I just have a list of them. So today's list, or highlights of today's list, I definitely want to continue the Dungeon Crawler Carl. I think I'll probably do like one per month to spread them out a little bit. I want to read Lessons in Chemistry, about a surprising female chemist leading change in 1960s housewife culture. I've heard a lot of good things about that one. West with Giraffes, which is actually an actual book that I have, delivering 2 giraffes to the San Diego Zoo during the Depression. And I adore giraffes so much. I have a whole like giraffe in my living room that someday might be the background. And so I think I've heard that it's a very good story. So I'm excited to read that one. Another book I'm very excited about is All the Light We Cannot See, because one of my all-time favorite books is by the same author, Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. And I read that last year. If I ever do a like favorite books of all time, I would probably include that book, Cloud Cuckoo Land. So I'm excited to see what he does with All the Light We Cannot See. And then another book that I'm excited about, which I think might be newly published, so maybe this does fit in the previous category, is Cleopatra, which is a retelling of her story. And right now, as of July 25th, That one is on sale on Amazon on Kindle for ridiculously low amount. Probably $5 or less, because I usually try to buy them if they are $5 or less and they're on my TBR. So that is the mid-year book freakout tag. I was surprised at how many books I read, and I was also surprised at how many were 4 stars. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's grade inflation or if they really were all 4-star books. And also going back through the list, I was kind of like, I rated that 4 stars, like I rated Wild Reverence 4 stars. But I keep coming back to it. It's almost like I need to not use star ratings. I don't know. This week, I am continuing to read a handful of books. One, I'm reading The Wedding People, which I'm listening to. I believe I'm about 60% through. So far I really like it, actually. It's been one of the good ones for cleaning and for driving. Homicide and Hollow Hollow, which is the Lila Macapagal series, Rosie Tita's Kitchen. So far it's a little bit formulaic and similar to Arsenic and Adobo, and I did listen to that recently. So I may hold out on reading the next one of that series. I do want to finish that series, but I may hold out on reading the rest of that series for a little bit. And then reading Dungeon Crawler Carl book 4. I think I just crested over the 50% mark of that one. That one's a little slower going, and I'm not sure if it's because it's longer. I'm reading on Kindle, so I don't have a good sense of pages because I just have the percentage on the bottom. That one's a little slower going, but I did hear in a few places that the beginning was slower and then it picked up to more what you would expect from a Dungeon Crawler Carl. Also, I really liked the third Dungeon Crawler Carl book with the Tangle and the trains, trying to figure that one out. That one was really exciting, and I'm really glad that he said at the beginning, you do not have to try to figure out this map. It will all be explained in the end, because I would have tried to figure out the map. And then the fourth book, which I don't think I've started yet, but I still have enough days on the Lily borrowing, is the next Rebecca Ross book after Divine Rivals. I don't remember what it's called, but I will put up here. So those are the ones I'm currently reading. So those will be in my next HRCYED update for sure. Thanks for visiting with me today and yapping about some books. I look forward to the next video where I'll be talking about the next HRCYED update after a couple of weeks of reading and sharing what books I've been working on. If you have any great book recommendations that I should be looking forward to for the rest of the year, pop them down below. If you enjoyed this video or know someone who enjoys yapping about books and listening to people yap about books, feel free to send this video on and share with your friends. Thanks. Bye.